What's up, everybody? My name is Tucker. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the 6 most interesting NBA teams of the 21-22 season. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like rating on it. Check out my socials up there at the top of the screen as well. And let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so quite frankly, there's a reason to be interested in every single team in the NBA every single year, in my opinion. There's always things to watch, but maybe that's just me. So I went ahead and broke down 6 teams that I think are especially interesting, potentially to everybody, not just me, who, covers this stuff on a literal daily basis. The first team up on the list is a team that has an interesting little mix of tension and expectations and just a lot on the line. And it's the Chicago Bulls. We've discussed this a bit in some previous videos, but I really want to fully flesh it out. The first and the primary thing for Chicago is the fact that Zach LaVine has still not signed a new deal with the team. And he is still, as of this moment, a 2022 NBA free agent, upcoming 2022 NBA free agent. And until that situation gets remedied, there's going to be a bit of tension around this team. There's always going to be a possibility of they start the season out 5-7 and they're all looking around like, hey, we're supposed to be a playoff team here. We're supposed to be a top 5 team in the East. What are we doing? And I feel tension just talking about Chicago until Zach LaVine has signed a new contract, until they figure out a way to bring him back into the fold. And then they can kind of roll forward, because if LaVine is signed, then you can struggle a little bit. It's like, oh yeah, well, we changed the roster around. We've got all these guards to mix in. We really didn't get a chance to get Vucevic fully integrated. All that stuff is fine as long as LaVine is signed. But if he's not, things just get kind of tense and kind of weird. But then once, let's just say that happens, right? Because I still, as of this moment, I'm not expecting LaVine to either be traded or to sign anywhere else 22 free agency, given the investment they made in this team this offseason, I should say. Even with those things said, there's just still a lot of unknowns paired with a lot of expectations in Chicago. You may or may not like the DeRozan signing. I think most people like the Lonzo signing. They've got Caruso. They've added some nice depth. We still have to see what Vucevic looks like. Patrick Williams is going to be shockingly critical to the integrity of this team defensively this upcoming season. They're going to be fun. There's no doubt about that. They're going to be fun. They're going to be interesting. But I think the interest mostly lies in what could be a potential train wreck for Chicago this year. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I do certainly have my doubts. I do think that they are a bit overrated when people are talking about them being like a top 4 team in the East and what is a very strong Eastern Conference. But they're definitely a team to keep an eye on in terms of what could possibly go wrong in Chicago this upcoming season. Next up on the list is the Dallas Mavericks. Probably my most interesting team going into this upcoming season, because I think the number of outcomes is extremely varied for what could happen for the Dallas Mavericks season this year. I think that some people could view them as a dark horse conference finals contender just because of the all-around brilliance of Luka and the possibility that KP finds himself again and starts to play better and finds some of that form that he showed in New York as well as at certain points of the bubble. And then there's the Jason Kidd of it all. And some people think that he has been reformed as an NBA coach despite not being a great head coach in either Brooklyn or Milwaukee. And some people view that as an extreme positive going from Rick Carlisle to him and could see this team as a dark horse conference finals contender. I, on the other hand, despite how much I love Luka, I can't get past the KP of it all. And if he's just going to be a spot-up shooter and the issues that has caused between him and Luka in terms of the hierarchy of the offense, where he views himself within the hierarchy of the NBA and not just being a spot-up shooter, how Kidd could potentially use him to try and mitigate that in the beginning of the year remains unclear, but it's mostly just Jason Kidd makes me nervous. If for some reason they'd been able to just figure out the Carlisle thing, bring him back, run it back next year, I would feel more confident about this team being a top 5 team in the West record-wise this upcoming season than I do with them having Jason Kidd. But you can already tell there's a ton of storylines here. Luka pushing for the MVP, how the offense looks differently with Jason Kidd there, with the first new head coach they've had in a decade. And again, I'm really keeping an eye on the KP stuff in the beginning of the year, because it kind of feels like to me, remember when Ty Lue took over in Cleveland and one of his things was like, I want to make sure that Kevin Love gets his touches. He gets his touches early in the game. He gets touches from the elbow. He gets touches in the post. Even if they're not extremely productive, he wanted to make sure that he was locked in, he was involved, he was invested in the game. And even if it was to the detriment of their overall offensive efficiency because you're taking the ball away from Kyrie and LeBron, he wanted to make sure that Kevin Love knew that he was a valued member of the team and the clear third guy out of the big three and not just a spot-up shooter. I could see Jason Kidd leaning into that ideal a little bit this upcoming season with Dallas, despite the fact that there isn't like a hierarchy here outside of like Luka's the top guy and then there's everybody else. I could see him really going to KP a lot in isolations and post-ups and stuff that has not been typically very efficient for KP, but gets him involved, gets him invested, and that could be a huge turning point for this team. It's something that Carlisle was reluctant to do. I don't have faith in Jason Kidd as a head coach, and so that makes me nervous about this team overall, despite the fact that I love Luka, but I'm interested. I want to see what they have to offer this upcoming season. Next up, the Charlotte Hornets, a team that is kind of been forgotten about here, because when you look at where they were in the standings last year, before Gordon Hayward and LaMelo got hurt last year, they were like a 4 or 5 seed in the East, and they fell all the way down, and it didn't go well after that, after those guys got hurt. But assuming they're fully healthy, Rozier, Bouknight, LaMelo, they got rid of Devontae Graham, but Gordon Hayward, like there's like 7 or 8 guys that you look at on this roster and you're like, I really like those players, depending on what you think about Kai Jones. They brought in some new bigs. PJ Washington, Miles Bridges. It's a fun team. It's an interesting team. It's going to be a great league pass team, assuming that LaMelo and Gordon Hayward are healthy. But I think they could be a sneaky good team that could be even higher than some other teams in the standings. Like if you want to tell me, if you want to give me really good odds on the Hornets having a better record this year than Chicago, I would take a look. I would absolutely take a look at them. I think that, again, health is a big issue here, and Hayward's never been able to stay healthy for an entire season over the last couple of years, and LaMelo had some injury issues as well. But I like the coach a lot, and I like all the different young pieces. Lots of guys playing for money on this Hornets team looking for rookie extensions. I like them. I'm interested, and I will be watching probably a shocking amount of Charlotte Hornets basketball this upcoming season. I'm very excited to see what they look like. Next up, Minnesota. By the way, did you guys see Karl Anthony Towns' press conference at Timberwolves Media Day? Like, there hasn't been any indication publicly that Karl Anthony Towns wants to leave, but the way he was talking about his experience in Minnesota sounded like a guy that if someone showed him the door and walked him out, he would have no problem following that person out of the door. It was honest. I respected how just how honest he was and how forthcoming he was with his thoughts. And maybe he just needed to vent and get it off his chest, but that is going to be continually an interesting team. I mean, he talked openly about the fact that they fired the head of their front office and how it was like, yeah, well, I mean, it's the Timberwolves. It makes sense. Like, he talked openly about how dysfunctional his first handful of years in the NBA have been in Minnesota, but he almost spoke about it in a way that was like, I moved on from it and I'm ready to rock and roll with this group. And it almost made me feel like he was more locked in than he'd ever been to trying to make this team a really good team this year. And whether it's him, Anthony Edwards, D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, there's talent on this Minnesota roster. There's a lot of different options here in terms of lineup possibilities. And again, health is a big thing. Cat has had a surprising amount of struggle staying on the floor the last couple of seasons. But if they are healthy, this can be a play-in/playoff team this upcoming year. I'm not saying they're going to be, but they have the talent to do it. Certainly offensively, I like the way they finished the year. I like their coach, again, especially offensively. If they can figure out a way to guard and or potentially bring in Ben Simmons with some kind of package that I know does not involve D'Angelo Russell or Anthony Edwards because they don't want to give up either one of those guys, this could be a very interesting team. I have not been this excited about a Minnesota basketball season in a very long time, and they could do exactly what they always do, which is falter and not be very good, but that does not stop me right now from being excited about the possibilities for this team this season. Second to last now, the New Orleans Pelicans. By the way, hey, just a heads up, Zion had foot surgery in the offseason. Should be good to go for the beginning of the year, but that's a little nugget that would have been nice to know before this week. It has just been like, if you want to talk about a disaster, absolute disaster, before the season has even started in New Orleans, it's what has happened so far. You've got the David Griffin stuff coming out. We've talked about that the other day, how much of a disaster that is. Zion having some very weird comments at Media Day. And then, oh, by the way, this guy who we're all worried about him being injured all the time, he had foot surgery, just so you know. You know, the guy that's supposed to be like one of the most powerfully athletic players / humans that the world has ever seen. Yeah, he had to have surgery on his foot. It's going to be a circus. They're either going to somehow string this together and put it together and win 45 games and be a super cool, fun team, or they're going to win 15 games and Zion is going to be sitting out for half the year. David Griffin's going to get fired midseason. Brandon Ingram's going to average like 34 a game, but they're going to lose every game. There's no in between. It's going to be one of those two things. It's either going to be they're somehow able to piece it together and it's like they're on a tightrope for the entire year, but they win 45 games, or it's a complete disaster. And you know what that sounds like to me? That sounds like a very interesting team and a very interesting season, and a team that I desperately want to see what happens to them this upcoming season. They very easily could have had the brightest future in the league if they had operated correctly over the last couple of seasons, and they simply haven't. And I think the stress and the tension of that is really being felt by this roster, as well as this coaching staff and this front office staff. So goodness gracious, I can't wait to see what happens with the Pelicans this year. Feels like we're getting very close to the NBA season, doesn't it? Then last up on the list, the Indiana Pacers. This one might seem a bit boring. I'm sure some of you are like, oh my gosh, why are we talking about the Pacers? Nobody cares. I care. You want to know why? Because I want to see if this re-energizes Rick Carlisle as one of the better coaches in the league, because I believe that's what he is. When he's fully locked in, when he is invested in his team, I think that's who he is. Granted, I also think that when he left Dallas, he did so in anticipation of taking the Milwaukee Bucks job, because at the time, it seemed like that was a distinct possibility. Had the Bucks lost to the Nets in the second round of the playoffs, I do think Coach Bud would have been fired, and I think they would have hired Rick Carlisle. I think he quit Dallas, or left Dallas, I should say, with the intention of going to Milwaukee. They turn it around, they win the title. That obviously is not a job that's open anymore. He goes to Indiana. Not that he doesn't like the Indiana job, but it's just interesting where he, in my opinion, speculating, it's very clear that's what happened. Is he quit, he wanted to go to Milwaukee, didn't happen, goes to Indiana. I just don't think that you leave Luka in all that, a team and a franchise you've been with for a decade, to go coach the Pacers. But that's where pretty much all of my interest lies for this team. I think they can be good. I think they can be interesting. I think they've got a ton of different pieces on this roster. They're always going to be involved in trade discussions because of the amount of pieces that they have. But it comes down to Carlisle for me, because he's a guy that can make a legitimate 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 win difference for a team, especially for a team that employed the coach that this team did last year. So there can be a lot of positives for this group this upcoming season, but if Carlisle is just kind of like mailing it in, I'm not saying he's going to, but if he is, that's going to be something to keep an eye on. Man, that just got me so amped and excited for the NBA season this upcoming year. But that's going to be the end of the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like rating on it. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you want to see more videos from me, check out the boxes on screen. Check out my socials at the top as well. And yeah, hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.